The raven steals the light. Before there was anything, before the great following together and the seated, before the hours walked through it, where the trees covered the land, or the birds flew between the trees, and in before the fish and the whales and seals swam in the sea. An old man lived in a house on the bank of the river with his only child, a daughter. When she was as beautiful as a hemlock fronds against the spring sky at sunrise, or as ugly as a sea stud. Doesn't really matter very much to this story, which takes place now in the dark, because at that time the whole world was dark. Inky, pitchy, all consuming dark, blacker than a thousand-story wage of midnight, blacker than anything anywhere has been since. The reason for all this blackness has to do with the old man in the house by the river, who had a box which contained an infinite number of vaccines, each nestled in a box slightly larger than itself, until finally the raven, who of course existed at the time because he had always existed and always would, was somewhat less than satisfied with this state of affairs, since it led to an awful lot of blundering around and bumping into things. It slowed him down a good deal in his pursuit of food and other fleshy pleasures, and in his constant effort to interfere to change things, eventually his bumbling around in the dark took him close to the hole of Bold Man. He first heard a little sing-song voice muttering away. When he followed the voice, he sent him to the wall of the house, and there, placing his ear against the planking, he could just make out the words. I have a box, and inside the box there's another box, and inside it are many more boxes. And in the smallest box of all is all the light in the world, and it is all mine, and I'll never give any of it to anyone, not even my daughter, because who knows, she may be as homely as a sea slug, and neither she nor I would like to know that. It only took an instant for the raven to decide to steal the light for himself, but it took a lot longer for him to invent a way to do so. First, he had to find a door into the house, but no matter how many times he circled it or how carefully he felt the planking, it remained a smooth, unbroken barrier. Sometimes I heard either the old man or his daughter leave the house to go get water for some other reason, but they always departed from the side of the house opposite to him. And when he ran around the other side of the wall, it seemed as unbroken as ever. Finally, Raven retired a little way to upstream and thought about how he could enter the house. As he did so, he began to think more and more of the young girl who lived there. And thinking of her began to stir more than just Raven's imagination. It's probably that she is homely as a sea slug, he said to himself. And on the other hand, she might be as beautiful as the fronds of the hemlock would be. It was a bright spring sunrise. If only there were enough light to make one. And in that idle speculation, he found the solution to his problem. He waited until the young woman, whose steps he could distinguish by now from those of her father, came to the river to gather water. Then he changed himself into a single hemlock needle, dropped himself into the river, and floated down just in time to be caught in the basket which the girl was dipping in the river. Even in his much diminished form, the raven was able to make at least a very small magic, enough to make the girl so thirsty she took a deep drink from the basket, and in so doing, swallowed the needle. The raven slithered down deep into her warm insides and found a soft, comfortable spot where he transformed himself once more, this time into a very small human being. And he went to sleep for a long while, and he slept. As he slept, he grew. The young girl didn't have any idea what was happening to her, and of course, she didn't tell her father, who noticed nothing unusual because it was so dark. Until suddenly he became very aware, indeed, of the new presence in the house. As the raven at last emerged triumphantly in the shape of a human boy child. He was, or would have been, if anyone could have seen him, the strange looking boy with a long, like beak-like nose and a few feathers here and there. In addition, he had shining eyes of the raven, which would have given his face a bright, inquisitive appearance. If anyone could have seen the features, then, and he was as noisy. He had a cry that one day he cautiously lifted the lid, but of course he could see nothing, and all that he could feel was another box. His grandfather, however, heard his precious treasure chest being disturbed, and he dealt very harshly with the would-be thief threatening to die. It took many days and much conjuring, carefully balanced with well-planned tantrums. But one by one, the boxes were removed. When only a few were left, a strange radiance, never before seen, began to diffuse the darkness of the house, disclosing vague shapes and the shadows, still too dim to have definite form. The raven child then begged in his most pitiful voice to be allowed to hold the right for just a moment. His request was instantly refused, but of course, in time, his grandfather yielded. The old man lifted the light in the form of a beautiful incandescent ball from the final box and tossed it to his grandson. He had only a glimpse of the child on whom he had lavished such love and affection. For even as the light was traveling toward him, the child changed from his human form to a huge, shining black shadow, wings spread and beak open, waiting. The raven snapped up the light into his jaws, thrust his great wings downward, and shot through the smoke hole of the house into the huge darkness of the world. The world was at once transformed. Mountains and valleys were starkly silhouetted. This river sparkled with broken reflections, and everywhere life began to stir. And from far away, another great winged shape launched itself into the air. As light struck the eyes of the eagle for the first time and showed him his target, the raven flew on, rejoicing in his wonderful new possession, admiring the effect it had on the world below, revealing an experience of being able to see where he was going, instead of flying blind and hoping for the best. He was having such a good time that he never saw the eagle until the eagle was almost upon him. In a panic, he swerved to escape the savage, outstretched claws. And in doing so, he dropped a good half of the light he was carrying. It fell to the rocky ground below, and there it broke into pieces, one large piece and too many small ones to count. They bounced back into the sky and remain there even today as the moon and stars that glorify the night. The eagle pursued the raven behind the rim of the world, and there, exhausted by the long chase, the raven finally let go of his last piece of way. Out beyond the rim of the world, it floated gently on the clouds and started up over the mountains. Lying to the east, its first rays caught the smoke hole of the house by the river, where the old Yan sat weeping bitterly over the loss of his precious light and the treachery of his grandchild. But as the light reached Danny, he looked up, and for the first time he saw his daughter, who had been quietly sitting during all this time. Completely bewildered by the rest of the race, the old man saw that she was as beautiful as the fronds of the hemlock against the spring sky at sunrise, and he began to feel a little better. The world was at once transformed. Mountains and valleys were starkly silhouetted, and this river sparkled with broken reflections, and everywhere life began to stir. And from far away, another great winged shape launched itself into the air. As light struck the eyes of the eagle for the first time and showed him his target, the raven flew on, rejoicing in his wonderful new possession, admiring the effect it had on the world below, revealing an experience of being able to see where he was going, instead of flying blind and hoping for the best. He was having such a good time that he never saw the eagle until the eagle was almost upon him. In a panic, he swerved to escape the savage, outstretched claws. And in doing so, he dropped a good half of the light he was carrying. It fell to the rocky ground below, and there it broke into pieces, one large piece and too many small ones to count. They bounced back into the sky and remain there even today as the moon and stars that glorify the night.